We beat this one a little bit to death in class, but I wanted to make a screencast with the answer so that you could pause it where you needed to and make sure you're able to do it step by step on your own. So we have an article that described a rise in variable costs of producing all sorts of things, but especially food-related products. And so I wanted to use this example in the context of a local firm and also to get some practice using this framework. All right, so the key here is a variable cost increase. Which of these is right? Is 100% of the costs increase borne by producers? The original question. So A is not true. We saw that the price went up by the full amount of the cost increase. 100% of the cost increase will be borne by consumers. And C was the popular choice, but that was, I got you guys. That's not my goal. My goal is for you to learn, but we learn by trial and error. And the C is true in the short run, but not in the long run. So that's what Chapter 7 has done, is introduce these long-run dynamics into our model. And then we do have enough information. So B was the right answer there. Good job, Grant, getting the one, and Team 5, I think, was the one team that got that right. Excellent work. To analyze this kind of event, we map our usual side-by-side framework, and I noticed in class that I had forgotten to label the supply curve there. Anyway, so here we have a base equilibrium. It's a long-run equilibrium. It's a long-run equilibrium because supply and demand are equal, and firms are at zero profits. If profits were greater than zero, there'd be entry over the long run. If profits were less than zero, there'd be exit over the long run. Only when firms are breaking even, just doing just as well as they would be in other sectors, only then would firms neither want to leave nor would other firms want to come into this market. All right, so here we are. One recommendation for doing these events is to use different colors for each step for the initial equilibrium, for the short-term analysis, and the long-run analysis. All right, let's go. So marginal costs go up. It's a variable cost increase. So I'm going to just have marginal costs go up by a ton. I'm exaggerating. This is a huge increase in marginal costs. And since the way I've tried to draw it, every marginal cost rose by the same amount at every level of output. That's true. Average total costs go up by the same amount at every level of output. That just makes it a little easier to do these if you do it that way. All right, so the key to these problems is to start cost analyses over here in the firm level framework, and then feed that information carefully back into the market framework. And the key here is that if each firm in the industry experienced this rise in their marginal costs, and that's the assumption, then the industry supply curve, that is just the industry marginal cost curve, would shift up by that same, that's a little bit too crooked even for me. I'm not the world's greatest artist, as you guys already know. There we go. A little bit better. Anyway, the key is to get the shift in the market supply curve to be about the same, or exactly the same if you're that good of an artist, as the shift in the firm level marginal cost. Because that's where the market supply curve comes from. The market supply curve, remember, we derived it from the firm level marginal cost curve. All right, so we got that right. This is something that we got it right because I did it carefully and I know how to do these. But students, if they're going to make a mistake in manipulating this framework, that's very likely going to be it. So be real careful of that. All right, there's a new market level equilibrium. Call that very cleverly P1. Q1. And then that new market price creates a new demand curve for the firm. The new price at which firms can sell all they can produce is P1. So price goes up to P1. And notice that that increase in price is not big enough to offset the firm's rise in costs. Because the new market equilibrium, because this demand curve slopes downward, the new market equilibrium doesn't jump by the full amount of the cost increase in the short run. All right, so we map that out. We show the new market equilibrium. My pen is acting up here. Is it working? Yeah. And then notice that at that Q1, P1 is less than average total costs at output Q1. So we have the situation where firms are losing money in the short run in the aftermath of the event. And this is what the Wall Street Journal article presented, a case where costs have gone up, but the price passed along to the consumers is less than that. And that's what it's going to be in the short run. All right, so that's the short run. A few highlights. Market price has gone up, but not by the full amount of the cost increase. Thus, firms are producing less than they were before, and they're running a short run loss. All right, now let's move to the long run. The long run analysis, we at the end of the short run analysis, we ask ourselves, are firms making money? If so, there's going to be exit. There's going to be entry, sorry. If, on the other hand, firms are losing money, there's going to be exit in the long run. And here, I'm assuming nothing else is changing. So here firms are losing money. Average total costs are higher than the price at this quantity Q1. So firms are losing money. In the short run, we're going to assume that those cost increases to the firms are going to persist. And thus some of those firms are going to say, hey, we can do better in a different in a different area of the economy. All right, so long run analysis, there has to be exit, and we know that, but you just got, before you start drawing any new curves, think about what has to happen. When is exit going to stop? Well, with each exit, the supply curve is going to shift to the left. Where's it all going to stop? When the survivors are able to just break even. So we'll call that P2. We know that enough exit has to happen to let survivors survive, otherwise exit would keep happening. This is, by the way, Q1. This is Q2. Notice the way I've drawn it, firms return to their original level of output and zero profits. What else to say? There was something as I was drawing, it popped into my mind. Make sure to point out this. Now I can't remember what this was. Yeah. Anyway, we'll leave it there. We're going to do another one of these, and well, many more potentially. Oh, back to the original question. No, the producers were earning zero profits at the beginning. They're earning zero profits at the end. So they're back to earning a normal rate of return. The cost increase has been passed on to the consumer. In our short run analysis with just the market, we found that the firm and the suppliers and the producers and the consumers shared the tax, and that how they shared it in the short run depended on the elasticities of price elasticities of demand and supply. Well, in the long run, it all gets passed on to the consumer. So in the long run, all these debates that we have, we got to tax business more, we got to tax people less, well, they're really immaterial. That first off, the incidence of the tax in the short run depends not on who you collect the money from, but rather on the nature of the supply and demand curve. But in the long run, it all gets paid by the consumer. And that's a real important lesson from this analysis. Anyway, back